I'm so pleased that at this site, that I respect so much, I could share information about her project. But I will not discuss Domik Detstva project because it's a vast project. Because one project that this organization runs. It's known Center for Support for those who were in the institutions. It was a project from the European Centre together with the Association of Schools of Political Studies, and because I think that this is at the same time both important and unknown to the public at large. But before I tell you about this project, well, I suppose half of the time I would allow myself to spend this time to immerse you into this problem, maybe so that you should understand what it's all about. First of all, we should say that in Russia we have 100,000 children who are not, who lost the tutelage of their parents and live in residential care, government-owned residential care. And you listen that this is absolutely senseless and lifeless, this phrase, and it is good. We know that in the database about orphans there are about 60,000 children who are looking for parents, but how many kids live in these orphanages, nobody knows. 100,000, this is my expert take. These, my educated guess, these kids live some life very different from what you can imagine. They are a closed institution, very much like barracks. Their whole life is subject to this sort of timetable, and 6 times a day they have meals. They go to toilet under the timetable. They take a tray on the timetable, and it is their school teacher that sends them to school. May I just make a remark? Sometimes as people listen to me, people think that this is some kind of figure of speech. This is just exaggeration, a metaphor. I'd like to take this message across that this is literally so.
And when I say that children go to toilet by the hour or by schedule, this is to be taken literally. This is Lyosha, Alexei, the one of the orphans. I once heard from him while being in the park that he wants to go to the toilet. And he said to me, no problem, I can stand it, and I can wait until. And he told me how he was taught to wait. Toilet was unlocked twice a day in the orphanage in Samara when he was living, in the morning and in the evening. And at school, kids could go to the toilet in the afternoon. And on weekends, this boy, learned to keep himself together. That being said, they have good entertainment, but they don't have much vote, and the cultural life comes to them. They don't go to cultural life, so to speak. In the morning, on the way to the canteen, they are reading what is their schedule. They find their name in the schedule, and they decide. They learn where they're going. They're going to museums, to cinemas, but where do they go? They only go to places which are in low demand, and usually they go to places which are quite boring in terms of exhibitions or cinema films, and there are many events that take place in the orphanages themselves. The orphanage, which is inside a big city, there are about 200 events a year. The peak is usually over around the New Year, the 1st of September, and there can be up to 3 to 5 events a day, whereby the sponsors, the bureaucrats, and those who are willing to congratulate kids The director of the institution has a graph whereby the bureaucrats come to take out give out the chocolates, and then the next batch of the gift givers arrives. This is a photograph I have taken at one of the events at that same orphanage where Alexei had come from, the boy that I had shown previously. This lady from the Ministry of Education is, and it's giving some sort of a bird. The kids are happy. If you and this is a big. This boy is happy. In the New Year period, when there are up to 5 events a day, kids have tangerines, oranges, candies, and they even sell out phones and graphic pads that they have been given in abundance. And they're buying some silly stuff, not books, of course. I have personally seen how drugs are being taken to an orphanage, and I have problem to go to orphanages because people know that I then go to conferences and tell people what I see in the orphanages, whereas drugs make an easier way to these orphans' houses. Meet Vladik. Vladik is an orphan whom I once literally brought back to life. I once had a call at 11 in the evening. This was summer, and I was told, "Come and get him. He's dying." The drugs were common in both the orphanage and he came to the and he was told, "You have to be at the summer camp and you don't come to us here, so you go away." And so I was called. I just made it to take him to the hospital where he was saved. And the hospital was not far, but this was a single measure. And in 6 months, he died in his room together with Pavel. He died of overdose. And when I say they are throwing at each other with candies and chocolates that they have in so much in these high season of holidays, Alisa was an orphan in Samara. So we asked her to conduct an experiment. Everything that is being given for the new year, kids were told to store it, and we came to weigh what was given. About 20 kilograms of sweets, because every event, of course, there are some gifts from Coca-Cola, from the oil company, from the governor, from the mayor, from the institutions, and everybody is coming with the sweets, but nobody comes to bring, say, with a gift card for the visiting a dentist. Just a picture to give a little bit of a positive aspect to what I was saying. One of the manifestations of maternal deprivation, of which all orphans are victims, depending on what has been happening to them, is the breach of affectation. And these breaches of affectation, which come from the absence of such contact, and there are, of course, direct consequences of this in the future. I shall read you something that has happened at one of the orphanages in Orenburg. The director of this institution said at the end of the event, there is a belief among the people, if you caress an orphan, you get richer. Come and caress the kids. This is a piece of reality, and unfortunately, long before any of the suicidal groups, our kids, our orphans, had long committed suicide attempts. I have seen these cases years ago, even before there was Facebook or other social works. Autoaggression is unfortunately a very common thing. The state, the government, is doing what is in its power to help them. They can't work. They cannot be exploited. They cannot even clean or wash dishes. One tutor of such a, as they say, a crisis institution told me a story. A 15-year-old boy who comes to him and says, I'm so tired of watching TV. Can I go and plow the snow? In the morning, she was reprimanded throughout the day, and she was reprimanded throughout the day, and she said, I shall no longer and ever allow anybody to clean the snow off the driveway. So they have to continue watching their TV. And I'm not sure what is the state doing to integrate them or prepare them for adult life. They never go to shops, they don't cook, as distinct from family kids. If you go, if you live with parents, then you have to go to shops, you have to see how they buy groceries, how they cook, how they keep them in the fridge. And then maybe at some point you join in these activities. These kids are totally deprived of any kind of menial tasks. So it's a part which is totally out of their lives. So we decided to try and influence this. We had a cooks or chef's masterclass. I was coming to an orphanage. We were going to the grocery store. I was telling them what is the sum total that they can be buying food. And so they were just talking to each other if they should get a package of buckwheat for 50 rubles or for 60 rubles. Then we were coming back to their institutions, cooking. We were cooking from. This is one of the chef's master classes. Something not particularly sophisticated, and then we were eating. It was usually good. Sometimes we were giving the educators, and once we even invited the director. And this was probably wrong, because on one of the subsequent visits, the director came to us and asked, "Do you have any education of a cook?" Well, of course, I didn't have any cook's diploma, and so we took everything home. All right, half of my time is off, and I think that this was just a short introduction. an acquaintance with these kids, for you to have a better understanding what do we encounter. And here, indeed, we see our project when at 18 the doors of the institution open, and they're literally thrown out of this institution, and they're totally not ready to enter this adult life. All of this is volunteer work, and this is important to me because when I'm told that the professionals need to be paid, I can quote other examples. We don't get paid. I work from 8 to 5 for salary, and then after office hours, I do exactly this. So I'm probably not a professional, but we have a big experience. And this is the task of our project, because when we invest into kids, and when we see that these kids virtually see so many perils after they enter the adult life, they may go to prison, become prostitutes, die of overdose, or go into criminal world. We are just trying to redress these wrongs. I would like you to meet some of our kids, although in most cases they are Dutch citizens who have reached the majority. They're citizens of Russia by now. This is Katya. She received an apartment from the state. She has a psychiatric diagnosis, and it's not just a smile on her face, which is constant, but also an inability of incapacity to think critically and a trust towards everybody. And eventually she was robbed of her apartment, and we had 3 years of working with the medical commissions, with courts, with realtors, attorneys at law, to get this apartment back to her. And this year she got back to her home, to her apartment, and this is a big victory for us. Sasha Alexander, this is the last photograph where he stands. One December day, he got into a taxi, and there was a car crash, and Sasha broke his backbone and became a disabled person. So it turned out that the state legislation does not allow for the orphan to be let without care at a hospital. So the volunteers had to pretty much live in this hospital and take care of this boy for 6 months. And I learned a lot of interesting words for myself. We were helped by his brother, the only relative that he had who had some interest in him. Unfortunately, his brother was arrested by the police because on that very day when Sasha got into a car crash, Vova, his brother, on the right from Sasha, robbed somebody of a phone in the street to buy himself some food. Vova was helping us to be on the duty, but when he was finally arrested, we understood that prison life would hardly bring him to better terms with the existence than taking care of his brother. And so we were trying and did everything in the court of law to try and persuade the judge that he may be better off taking care of his brother rather than going to jail. We did succeed, and this boy was led out of the prison on parole. He was a great volunteer, but it turned out that he had certain conditions for parole. And that condition was being at home at night, between 10 and 6 in the morning. Unfortunately, the inspector came to check for him on the day when the alcoholic boyfriend of his mother chased him out of the apartment because the court. The inspector went to the court, and the court actually liquidated the parole, and he is in jail now, and volunteers come to visit him. The only possible way to save him from relapse, and I think that I would have probably not stood this test. And this is also a case of post-institution life. This is Roma. That's a young boy, and sponsors still come to give him gifts. He was sent to a correction institution. He was beaten at this institution. He fled. Where did he flee? He fled to the orphanage from which he was kicked out. The director said that you're not with us, we don't need you. This was the end of November, and he fled. He didn't have clothes. And he was among the homeless for some time. And when I found him, this is how he looked. And there was hardly anything to eat. And when he had something to eat, he was sharing the food with the cats who were warming him. So we put him into the college, the vocational school rather, and he now looks much better. Although he's toxicomanic now, but we're trying to. And there are many cases. There are many cases like this. But what is the goal? The goal is to give, to try and realize what is a post-institution volunteer work, why is it needed. The technology can be taken in any region, can be replicated in any region, and we will be happy to tell you more about the experience we have accumulated. Several photographs from our activities, sports, vocational activities, intellectual development, psychological work, and the most important objective of this project is to allow them to integrate them into the society. Because the society is indeed like a space or cosmos to them. Thank you very much.